Has LSU found its defensive line coach? We're discussing Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get great podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. Thank you for helping make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in the world. Well, LSU has been frantically trying to fill its defensive line coaching spot, the final full-time on-field defensive staff spot. And it looks like they might have done that. Sterling Lucas from South Carolina is the new target. We reported that on Friday over at LouisianaSports.net. Hat tip to Football Scoop. They had it first. Matt Zenitz and others have reported the same. As a matter of fact, Gamecock Central is now reporting that Lucas is expected to accept the position on Lane Kiffin's staff. We do not know exactly what that title will be, but we can deduce that it's going to be on the defensive line. So it is worth noting. Let me give you sort of the bio here on Sterling Lucas, tell you who he is, what he does, his background, all that sort of stuff. And then we'll sort of make it through how LSU got to this point. We'll look at the defensive line for 2026. So Sterling Lucas has been at South Carolina since 2022. So he spent 4 seasons at South Carolina. His current title is defensive run game coordinator. So he's the guy, you when you have a young assistant that you want to keep who's ascending, the way that you can sort of justify a pay raise and keep them is to slap a coordinator title on there. There's, passing game coordinator, run game coordinator. Well, how about the defensive run game coordinator? But he also works specifically with the defensive ends and the outside linebackers. So he's the guy working with the edge players. And look, the past couple of years, man, South Carolina has been really good there. Obviously, right now you're talking about 5-star Dylan Stewart in his second season, just finishing his second season in South Carolina. But a year ago in 2024, you had maybe the best tandem in the country with Stewart as a true freshman 5-star and Kyle Kennard, who was the SEC Defensive Player of the Year, won National Defensive Player of the Year honors when he had 18 and a half TFLs, 11 and a half sacks. I mean, a monster season for Kyle Kennard. And that was Sterling Lucas's position group. He won the Nagurski, did Kennard. So it was 15 and a half TFLs and 11 and a half sacks, excuse me. So second in program history on sacks behind only Jadeveon Clowney. So you're talking about a dude, and that was his position group. He's also got a bunch, he's still a relatively young guy, but got a bunch of NFL experience. So started his career in 2013 as a GA at NC State, where he was there from 2013 to 2015. And then starting in 2016, he jumped into the NFL, where he was with the Baltimore Ravens until he joined Jacksonville in 2021. And then after that one season in Jacksonville in 2022, he joined South Carolina as the outside linebackers coach, and now has since ascended, adding more roles in that title. So, this is interesting for LSU because you're really hoping to find stability at that spot. This has been odd. Okay, just like follow me here. Go back, just like you look at Brian Kelly's tenure, right? And you go back to when they hired Jamar Cain. Well, Jamar Cain left LSU in the spring of 2023, like smack dab in the middle of spring practice. So after Brian Kelly's first season in 22, they're in spring of 23, and Jamar Cain gets hired by Sean Payton and the Denver Broncos to go be their defensive line coach. Well, LSU promotes Gerald Chapman, who was an assistant. He was an analyst on staff. So Chapman coaches the defensive line for the rest of spring. Well, they don't hire Chapman full-time, so he leaves for Tulane. I'm going to come back to Chapman in a second. So Chapman leaves for Tulane, and they hire Jimmy Lindsey from South Carolina, incidentally. Well, right at the start of fall camp, Jimmy Lindsey has a really serious medical condition and ends up missing effectively the whole season. Well, when Jimmy Lindsey was out, Then you had John Jancic move from his outside linebacker role inside to coach defensive tackles, which is a position he hadn't really coached before. So at a point in the season, remember they brought Pete Jenkins in to assist for the remainder of the season. Well, after 2023, they go hire Bo Davis away from Texas. They bring the LSU alum, noted defensive line coach, back to Baton Rouge. And Bo Davis is only here for 1 year. So Bo Davis is here for 1 year, doesn't love the way the college game is going. He takes a job with the New Orleans Saints in the NFL. And so LSU hires Kyle Williams, gives him his first college job, another former Tiger, thinking you'll create some stability there. And after 1 year, Kyle Williams clearly is not cut out for college coach. A very good college coach. Don't misunderstand me. I think that group is very good this year. I just don't think he loves what the college game is right now with NIL, et cetera, transfer portal, and also then just the lifestyle as well. Kyle's a guy that was playing golf every single day and coaching at his alma mater, Ruston, and he's got young kids who are competitive athletes. And I think Kyle was ready to go back to that lifestyle where he could play golf and watch his kids and travel and have a little bit more of a life. So if you just think about starting with Jamar Cain, from when Brian Kelly got here, Jamar Cain, Gerald Chapman, Jimmy Lindsey, John Jancic, Pete Jenkins, Bo Davis would be 6, Kyle Williams 7, and now you're looking at your eighth defensive line coach since Brian Kelly showed up in 2022. I mean, that is a staggering amount of turnover in 4 seasons. So, through 4 seasons of football. So, and then going into the 5th next year with whoever the hire is, assuming here that it will be Sterling Lucas. So you've had this really tumultuous run there with your defensive line coaches. And this has not been an easy position to fill for Lane Kiffin on his staff. It looked like they were going to get a deal done with Elijah Robinson, which would have been a home run. Robinson, noted recruiter, SEC experience. It's been 6 years at Texas A&M, left to take the DC job at Syracuse, where he's been the last 2 years. Syracuse's defense was not very good. He was demoted, ultimately decided like he was going to leave and join Lane Kiffin's staff. And then Nebraska comes open. He had worked with Matt Rule at both Baylor and at Temple. And then his alma mater, Elijah Robinson, played at Penn State. Well, obviously you have a new coach now with Matt Campbell going to Penn State, and they're looking for a defensive line coach. So there's that possibility as well. So it became pretty clear that Robinson wasn't going to pick LSU. And so then we learned they moved on to Gerald Chapman, the aforementioned Gerald Chapman, who was an analyst under Brian Kelly, who was promoted after Jamar Cain left, didn't get the job full-time, went to Tulane. Well, he's been in Florida. Florida has coaching turnover. Well, ultimately, he decided to stay in Gainesville when John Summerall gave him the opportunity to stay there in Gainesville and be retained. So no Elijah Robinson, no Gerald Chapman. Now it's Sterling Lucas. The other 2 names that I think most people were curious about or interested in or have asked about are Chris Kiffin, Lane's brother, and then Ed Orgeron. Well, Chris Kiffin's going to be on staff. He was on staff the last 2 years at Ole Miss. And as we've mentioned here before, if you're an everydayer, shout out, you've heard me say it. But Chris Kiffin, he's 43 years old, but during his career, Chris Kiffin has spent 11 seasons coaching defensive line at both the college and NFL levels. So he's had a lot of success doing that. And as an analyst on this staff, which is now clearly the role he'll fill, he'll work on field with one of these position groups. If it's the stars, maybe Blake Baker coaches the off-ball linebackers, Chris Kiffin coaches the stars, maybe Sterling Lucas coaches the defensive tackles, and Kevin Peoples coaches the edge rushers, which is likely how this is going to work out. But Chris Kiffin was one of those options that you knew was there and you could hire if it got to that. But clearly there's another option they have here with Sterling Lucas. The other is Ed Orgeron, and I know there's a sentimentality with a lot of LSU fans about Coach O and the desire to bring him back. And the thing that I'll say again here that I've said all along from the very beginning of this is I have not had anyone credibly from LSU tell me that the Orgeron thing was a real possibility. I think all of that was agent driven. Ed Orgeron just earlier this week on December the 15th got his final buyout payment from LSU. I think knowing his buyout money was drying up, he was ready to get back into coaching, and his agents did what agents are supposed to do, which is push their client's name into the conversation for any job. And so that's why you heard Orgeron mentioned for Arkansas and Oregon State, a Tulane, a lot of different positions, and for a defensive line coach job at LSU, which I have no doubt he would take. But I don't know that there was ever really sincere interest from the LSU perspective to bring Ed Orgeron back. If they wanted to hire him at any point during this process, they could have. He's not working. He's available. If he was the choice, they could have brought him in. And, I wouldn't be opposed to that, provided Ed Orgeron was humble enough to understand that he was coming to work on someone else's staff at a place where he was once the head coach and led LSU to a national championship. So that's not an easy thing to do. But clearly, this was not the route that Lane Kiffin ever wanted to go, and it was not something anyone at LSU ever really pushed. So it sounds like it'll be Sterling Lucas. But again, the caveat, when we talk about these coaching searches, until the ink is dry on the contract, it's not done. We said the same thing about Elijah Robinson when Football Scoop reported that was done. Well, clearly it wasn't. And this apparently isn't yet, but it sounds like from both LSU and South Carolina reporters, it's going to head this way. This is what we reported earlier today at LouisianaSports.net, that Sterling Lucas was the target, and we'll see if they can ultimately get this deal done. Now, what does this mean for the defensive line in 2026? I want to talk about that. We'll do it next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. The holidays always show up faster than we expect. And if you're still putting together gifts, last-minute decor, or getting your home ready for guests, Wayfair has you covered. Whether you need a quick room refresh, new bedding, or those final seasonal touches, Wayfair makes it easy to get what you need fast. Wayfair truly is your one-stop shop for everything home, with decor, furniture, kitchen essentials, and gifts for every style and every budget, all delivered quickly and easily. The Wayfair items you order will instantly refresh your space without a big project. Wayfair is perfect for gifting too. They have guides, tons of options, and something for everyone on any budget. Get last-minute hosting essentials, gifts for all of your loved ones, and decor to celebrate the holidays for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair. Every style, every home. Today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. And FanDuel lets you jump into that moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. And finally, we're brought to you by Rocket Money. You ever feel like your money just disappears each month? It happens fast. A few subscriptions here, an impulse buy there. Suddenly, the number in your bank account doesn't match the number in your head. Well, Rocket Money helps you get clarity, track every dollar, and stay in control of your finances, because managing your money shouldn't feel like a second job. Rocket Money does the heavy lifting for you so you can save more and stress less. Rocket Money will find subscriptions you forgot you were paying and helps you clean them up quickly. Seeing all of your spending on one dashboard makes it easier to understand where your money is going. So take control of your finances. Cancel all your unwanted subscriptions with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. rocketmoney.com/locked-on. If in fact Sterling Lucas is LSU's defensive line coach, they're going to really have to make over that room. Just consider what they're losing. If you look at snap counts defensively, as far as your defensive tackles are concerned, um, the defensive tackle who had the most snaps this year was Bernard Gooden with 412. He's done out of eligibility. Next was Jacobin Guillory with 353, also out of eligibility. Dom McKinley is next with 332. Now he'll return, 322, excuse me. He'll return for his junior season. And then Ahmad Bro with 274 was next because LSU did largely utilize a 4-man rotation at defensive tackle. Well, remember, Bro has declared his intention to enter the transfer portal. So of your top 4, the guys that are part of that rotation, 3 of the 4 are gone. Now, Buddy Mathis, the true freshman, logged 119 snaps across the defensive line for LSU. And you would think, now it would obviously depend what, like your same defense with Blake Baker, but new defensive line coach. We'll see how that all goes. Just keeping in mind, obviously, that even Bo Davis to Kyle Williams were dramatically different stylistically, right? Bo Davis, we talked about this plenty. Bo Davis, one of the big, hulking, 340, 50, 60 pounds, space-eating defensive tackles. Kyle Williams wanted smaller, more agile, more athletic defensive tackles. Just look at the transfer portal additions each brought in. In the first portal window, Bo Davis brought in Sydir Mitchell from Texas, a 350-pound defensive tackle. In the second portal window last year, Kyle Williams brought in Bernard Gooden, 280 pounds, fast, powerful, get up the field, make plays. So, we'll see what, Lucas may favor, but that's when you're talking about meaningful snaps. That's really it from your defensive tackles. I mean, Sean Washington, who also can return, played 44 snaps the entire season. Brandon Brown played 16 snaps the entire season. So you're talking about really returning one guy in Dom McKinley, and then further down the line, Buddy Mathis. Now, you will absolutely have the young guys from this recent year's team, from the most recent signing class, like I mentioned, Buddy Mathis, Brandon Brown, those guys back, Zion Williams, if in fact they all want to return or are able to return or asked to return from the new staff. You also, remember, are bringing in 2 very key signees. Richard Anderson out of Edna Carr, 5-star, number 1 defensive tackle in the country. And then Deuce Gerald's out of Georgia with ties to Baton Rouge. Of course, his dad played at Scotlandville and went to Ole Miss, where he played, incidentally, for Ed Orgeron and Frank Wilson. Deuce Gerald's was the number 3 defensive tackle in the country. So you got the number 1 and number 3 defensive tackles in the country in Anderson and Gerald. So if you're just looking at like a 4-man rotation, it's plausible that you could be looking at Dom McKinley, Buddy Mathis, Richard Anderson, Deuce Gerald. Now you have some wild cards there. Sean Washington is a wild card. Brandon Brown, who we just mentioned, is a wild card. Zion Williams would be a wild card as well. And I think the real question, though, is do you go into the transfer portal looking to add a veteran interior defensive lineman? Listen, Eccles from Ole Miss is a guy that maybe you would have targeted, but on Thursday, Ole Miss announced they've re-signed 4 of their players to return, and one of them was Eccles, their defensive tackle. So that could have, in theory, been a veteran player, would have joined Lane Kiffin from Oxford in Baton Rouge. But there will be no shortage of options or opportunities. I'll continue to say it. The question is, do you trust the evaluation? Because this defense is going to be made over. Your leading tacklers this year, A.J. Halsey was your leading tackler with 88. He's gone. Devon Keys was next. He'll be back. West Weeks with 74 was third. He's gone. Then to Marcus Cooley. Harold Perkins, gone. Jack Pyburn, gone. Mansour Delane, gone. You get the point? Like, a lot of your key producers defensively are gone. And then when we look at snap counts on the interior of the defensive line, you're losing 3 of your top 4 guys. So it is going to look a lot different. The question is, does this coaching staff Lane Kiffin, GM Billy Glasscock, new defensive line coach Sterling Lucas, provided they get this done, are they content looking at Don McKinley, Buddy Mathis, Brandon Brown, Richard Anderson, Deuce Gerald, Zion with the young guys or inexperienced, or is that a position where they're going, nope, let's go get 21, 22-year-old dudes who have played 15, 20, 25 collegiate games, who are plug-and-play starters, who have been Power 4 starters in college football? And that's something we don't know, but we'll start to get that answer come January 2nd when the portal window opens. One other reminder, remember, the portal window opens January 2nd, but that's a Friday. Players can't make visits until Monday, January the 5th. So the portal window will open January 2nd. And my guess is a lot of these guys will enter with a do not contact tag, meaning they've already got their destination. But for those that are undecided, January 5th will be when visits start, and you'll actually see some of these athletes coming to campus. So just something to file away. But Sterling Lucas looks like the guy for LSU to fill out the defensive staff. Now, if that happens, the only staff spot remaining will obviously be the running backs coach spot, which we all think is going to be Kevin Smith coming over from Ole Miss when Ole Miss's season, in fact, ends in the college football playoff. And until then, we'll continue to wait and watch, and we'll follow it right here on Locked on LSU. So do us a favor, please smash that like button. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app, rate us, leave a review. And thanks for watching as well every single weekday on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Until next time, it's Locked on LSU, your team every day.